Welcome to the food allergy consumer journey portion of our discussion today. I am so excited to have with me Jason Lindy, who's Vice President of Government Affairs at FAIR, as well as Anita Roach, who is Vice President of Education and Voice of Patient. We're going to dig right in so you get all the information that you need. So, the food allergy consumer journey is a 2 year study that came from three distinct research projects. Thanks to the National Confectioners Association and Dr. Ruchi Gupta, we had the first study with Northwestern University looking at precautionary allergen labeling. Thanks to a food allergy dad and his two daughters who are part of our advocacy fly in, McKinsey came in to help us really understand the day to day needs of the food allergy consumer as you're doing your grocery shopping. And finally, we worked with Global Strategies Group because we wanted to make sure that all the data we were collecting from thousands of people across the United States had actually been vetted against the needs of the underserved community. And we owe a thank you to all of you who are participants in the patient registry. Because of your participation, many of you got to be involved in this study, and we couldn't have done it without your support. So here's what we learned. We learned that there are 85 million Americans impacted by food allergy consumer issues. And what I mean by that is that we have individuals who have life threatening food allergies, and that's the population that FAIR deals with every single day. In addition, there are people who have food intolerances, and then there are the family members of those individuals. And so 85 million Americans do not buy the same proteins that can trigger an allergic reaction. For those of us in the food allergy space, what we know is that life threatening food allergies have been growing astronomically 4% per year for the last 20 years. So, what we want to do is give you a quick snapshot of what you're going to see today. First, for the food allergy consumer, as you're going through and making your purchasing decisions, these are the things that are most important to you. Safety always comes first, and then taste. Now, to give you a little hint, when consumer companies are working with day to day consumers, they usually look at taste, value, and convenience. So it's been really critical for us to elevate the need for safety first and foremost. Secondly, you're premium shoppers. And what that means is that you're spending a little bit more than the average consumer. And that's not necessarily the best thing because a lot of you can't actually afford to go without certain types of foods. And so, what we're hoping to do through the study is to work out a process where the cost becomes down and that you actually have an opportunity to buy even more foods that are safe for your family. You're loyal, yet you're always looking. And you're dedicated shoppers. You'll spend 3 to 5 minutes looking and reading the labels. And those brands that you're loyal to, yes, you're very loyal to them, but you're actually willing to try other brands because you're like any other consumer. You want it to taste good and you want it to fit your pocketbook. Trust is the most important thing to you. And that's one reason why we're tackling labeling. It's pretty hard to have trust when you're very confused. And most importantly, you have a very big voice, and FAIR plans to amplify your voice. So, what we're talking to companies and to the US government about is how do we improve precautionary allergen labeling and create a standard label with evidence based definitions that are easy for you to understand. You don't want to be on the phone calling the 800 number. You don't want to be spending 3 to 5 minutes looking at a package. We understand that. And so that's the conversation we're having right now because we want to develop resources that work for the entire community and not only resources that work for you, but we want to make sure that your friends who have your kids coming over to do slumber parties or go out on a sports team event, that they have all of this information too, and that it's very easy for them to understand because keeping your children safe is the number one priority for FAIR. So I'm going to pass the baton to Anita Roach on my team, who's going to talk to you about defining the food allergy consumer journey. She's going to be joined by Jason Lindy through part of this process. And so I turn it to you, Anita.
Thank you, Lisa. And thank you everyone for joining us today at the Living Teal Global Summit. We're so thrilled to have you, and I'm really excited to share this data with you. So just to begin, we'll start off with the definitions we used for the research study. We looked at two main consumer groups, those who are food allergic, regardless of reaction history, as well as those who are intolerant, typically only self-reporting GI issues like cramping or stomach aches. And so, with both of these consumer groups, we quantified the number of Americans facing these conditions. And specifically for the top 9 allergens, we found that about 29 million Americans are allergic to the top 9 allergens. 31 million Americans are intolerant to the top 9 allergens, equating to about 60 million Americans. And then we took a look at the Americans who are living in households with someone with either a food allergy or intolerance to the top 9 allergens, and that equated to about 25 million Americans. So, all told, we have 85 million Americans avoiding the top 9 allergens in their day to day purchasing of foods. So, then we took a look at the behaviors across these different consumer groups. And we found that in the food allergic group, regardless of reaction history, families tended to have the same top 3 attitudes. They always carefully read ingredients. They are always looking for variety in what they serve their family, and they're always thinking about their family's health and nutrition. Many of the non-allergic, non-intolerant family members are also avoiding allergens, especially if they live with someone with a moderate to severe reaction history. You all know that the rate of food allergy is increasing every year, and the increase is actually outpacing the population growth in the United States at about 4% every year. Again, the number of both food allergic children and adults with food allergy has doubled since 1997. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Jason Lindy to talk a little bit more about the qualitative research we conducted to understand the food allergy consumer journey.
Thank you, Anita, and I hope everyone's having a great time at this year's summit. It's such a great opportunity to be with each other, and we look forward to being back in person real soon. What we found with the decision process for people when they buy food is something that all of us know and know all too well, frankly, and that is when it comes to people buying food who have someone in their family who has food allergies. The very first criteria is health. It's got to be safe and it's got to be healthy for it to end up in the cart. And then the second item is taste. And obviously, we want to make sure that when we buy these products that they're going to be consumed, not only that they're healthy, but they're tasty. But before I move on to the next slide, I did want to spend just a moment with you about the qualitative survey. So at the outset of the COVID-19 pandemic, we had reached out. We worked with a leading survey research firm here in the States called Global Strategy Group. And what they did was they helped us find 23 food allergy parents. And now these food allergy parents were predominantly either African American or Latinx. And over the course of 3 days and nights, we conducted a qualitative survey with them. It was basically an online journaling exercise. So at the end of day one, we had asked them, hey, please go out and buy groceries. And then throughout day one, day two, and day three, we shared with them different questions. We asked them to give us their sense of what a great label looks like. What are their fears and concerns? And one of the things that we were really grateful for from this result, from this research, was that the results from the qualitative study matched up very nicely with the quantitative studies that Lisa mentioned earlier, both the Northwestern and the McKinsey work. And so what we found and what Lisa alluded to at the outset was that people who have food allergies in their families or suffer from food allergies themselves are paying more, on average about 5%. And it's frankly, at this point in time, it's a tale of two cities that's going on. And what I mean by that is quite clear. For some people who are doing well, they indicate, as you can see on this on the screen, that about a third of them are willing to pay more for the highest quality of food. And that's great if you have the economic means to do so. But there's another side to the city for folks who are like the 18 million Americans who are unemployed and who are just getting by. And it's extremely difficult to make ends meet and to buy food that their family can use if one of their children has an allergy. And you'll notice this quote. We received about 400 pages of of quotes and qualitative data from the Global Strategy Group, this was the one that most impacted us. And want to share it with you for you to read, obviously. But throughout this presentation, you'll see other quotes, and those all come from folks who were part of that study. And the reason that we share with you sort of their background is the most important thing that we wanted to do was make sure that, when we talk to African American and Latinx parents, and those, frankly, who are struggling, earning less than 25 grand a year, we wanted to make sure that we understood their voices and we understood their concerns. So too often, I think there's the sense that the food allergy community is, very much suburban focused. And for us, that's just not the case. We want to make sure that we advocate on behalf of everyone who's impacted. And that's why this survey is so critically important for us.
Thank you, Jason. I'll take it away now and talk a little bit more about the food allergy consumer journey and the burdens that you all face every day. Through our work with McKinsey, we found that families are considering about 5.5 brands every time they go shopping. 38% of you know what brand you're going to buy before you even go shopping. However, 30% are always looking for new products for themselves and their family. Even with that eagerness to buy new products, 66% of you often repurchase the same brands, the same products every time. And you can see on the right-hand side, these quotes from families who may reflect some of the positions and feelings that you all have. They're tired of having to try to look for different brands and not being able to find any. And then they're always doing a lot of research. They're going on shopping trips that just take a long time in order to find brands that work for themselves and their families. So the takeaway here is that we all know you are a dedicated and loyal community. And there's a big opportunity here to provide more products and services to help you and your family find affordable and safe food. Now let's talk a little bit about what we find as it relates to spending time reading labels. Through our survey with McKinsey, we found that 71% of families read labels for every single food they purchase, even if they've purchased it before. 55% of you may spend up to 5 minutes or even more reading labels for these products, even if you've purchased it before. And then 28% will only purchase foods that have an allergy or allergen-friendly labeling on the package. This just goes to speak to the burden that the food allergic consumers facing when trying to find safe, affordable, and tasty foods for their family, especially during a pandemic. We know in addition to spending time reading labels, families often have to visit multiple stores in order to find enough safe, affordable, and tasty foods for themselves and their families. And we found that that was the case across socioeconomic backgrounds. We know that stocking up is really important to those with food allergy, and that's been especially difficult during the current pandemic. That is why families are often having to go to multiple stores because they need to have enough safe, affordable foods for their family in order to stay well nutrition. So how does a manufacturer gain the trust of the community? We know that there are 3 important factors as it relates to building trust: safe, tasty, and affordable. Having products that are great tasting, affordable, from brands that they feel like they can trust. Food allergy consumers like you will really lean towards those brands, especially if it tastes good to their family members. And most importantly, the product has to be safe. We asked during our McKinsey survey a little bit more about trust, and we found that many of you often trust smaller brands and food allergy friendly brands more than the larger brands. We understand that reasoning, and we feel like there is an opportunity for larger brands to help build trust. And with that, I will turn over the next slide to Lisa.
So here's the opportunity to you. You have a big voice, and I'm not sure that the CPG companies understood how big your voice was until we did this market research. But essentially, we're talking about $19 billion. That's the amount of money that people are spending as a result of looking for foods as they're trying to avoid those proteins that trigger an allergic reaction. So if we look at the $10 billion number, What we know is that there's so much confusion in the marketplace that people are avoiding entire categories of food. And they're not just avoiding them because maybe they're associated with an allergen, but they're avoiding them because they're just confused about what's in the product. And then we have $9 billion. Those allergen-free products. And it's pretty much dominated by the sort of gluten-free category and the dairy category. And sometimes those are way above your price point. And so what we wanted to do is we wanted to serve up your voice to the big companies and the small companies, get them to understand, and investors, that's always an important critical thing, get them to understand what a big market you represent and why it is we need to clean up this confusion so that you feel more confident in looking at the different purchase decisions that you're making.
So in this next section, we're going to go over some of the data that we collected in partnership with Northwestern University and sponsored by the National Confectioners Association to understand the feelings around precautionary allergen labels and the understanding of them within the community. So thank you to all those who participated in that survey this past fall. We got some really important information from that survey, and we're excited to share that with you today. So one of the items that we found through that survey is that the right label can help products overcome your biggest objection. Really understand and being able to easily understand whether or not a product is safe for yourself and your family. We already know consumers want easy and clear labels that are consistently placed. It takes a lot of time, as we said, 3 to 5 minutes or more reading labels. So anything that companies can do to make that process easier and more transparent would be appreciated. We also found through that survey that respondents indicated that their top choice of precautionary allergen label is not suitable for X allergy. Right behind that is the may contain precautionary allergen label. We also found that families preferred when the allergen was specifically named in that may contain statement as opposed to the allergen category. So respondents prefer may contain hazelnut versus may contain tree nut. And again, respondents prefer precautionary allergen label placement that was both on front and back of the package. We know that you are all busy, and we found through our work with Global Strategy Group that that is especially true when you're trying to read labels and find the right products for your family. What we found through that research is that there was a strong support for an app, website, or QR code that could make the process easier, quicker, and maybe something that you can do ahead of time before going to the store to cut down on some of that time in the store. We found that there was a lot of positive feedback around iconography, so icons of the allergen to help you quickly and easily identify a product as being safe or not safe for your family. So even with the agreement of the need for icons, families still felt that the words were needed. They still wanted to see that statement and be able to read the statement in order to better understand whether or not a product was right for them.
So we're really looking forward to working not only with the industry and the government and key influencers, those associations in Washington that represent different industry, but especially with you. We so appreciate your adding your voice through the Fair Patient Registry, and for those of you who participated in these various surveys and that continue to participate in the Fair Patient Registry surveys. So what are we looking at? What we're looking at is trying to standardize on one precautionary allergen label. And what I want to make clear, because there's been some confusion about this, is that right now, none of those labels, there are 40 labels in market. And if we did a poll as to what the meaning is of each of those labels, we would get 40 different answers because none of the labels are actually built on a standard. So when we say a standard label, we mean a label that actually has standards behind it. Secondarily, we talk about nomenclature, and that's what you call things. It's the vocabulary you use. We want to standardize nomenclature. We want to make sure that people are saying the same thing so that when you call big company A and small company B, they're giving you exactly the same answer and they're using the same words when they're giving you that answer. Or when you go on their website, maybe it's an Amazon or a Walmart website to purchase your grocery stores online, we want that same information on there. We want stuff to be described exactly the same way. And most importantly, there's no way we can make this change without a massive education campaign. And so working with the other advocacy groups, working with the industry, what we want to do is make sure not only that the 85 million Americans who are avoiding these proteins are educated, but everyone in their life, everyone, all the moms who are taking a special treat into a classroom, we want all Americans to understand exactly what it is that they're looking about and what they can understand are the caution that they need to apply to their purchasing when it affects you or your family. So, on an immediate basis, one of the points we've brought forward is it's easiest to standardize things that are digital. So, especially during COVID, we saw the numbers increasing massively of Americans who are shopping online. There's more space online. One bad thing about packages is they can be pretty tiny. So, it's a great opportunity for companies to lean in and give you more information and give you that information in a standard way. Then there are these things called QR codes. And for those of you with a smartphone, you can swipe the package. And when you do so, we want to make sure that the information that you're looking at, again, is the same information. And so whether it's smart label or whether it's a QR code from a company, we want to make sure that information is standardized. And we think that's the fastest way for the industry to tell you about any changes that have been made in that packaging. And so that's where we want to standardize first. Of course, we also want to standardize what we call on-pack. And the on-pack process, especially with COVID, it gets a little bit slower. It can actually take a period of time, sometimes 18 to 24 months, to make sure that every product is off the shelf that has the old label on it. So there will be a transition period through this process. And to be honest with you, I think as technology improves around cleaning and other types of things that companies can do to make products even safer and safer and safer, that there will continue to be transitions. But you're used to that with technology. And what we want to do, like I said, is have an education campaign so you and all the other people making purchasing decisions that impact you and your family know where they get that information and what's the latest information. What you may have seen is that FAIR did an infographic, because who doesn't like infographics? And also they're a heck of a lot easier to understand. And so we've been telling anybody who's actually watching today, we can send it to you. It's open source. We'll let you use it wherever you want to in order to be able to reiterate this information. So maybe you're from a company and you're hearing this from the first time and you wanted to learn more about food allergies, or maybe you're a friend of someone and you happen to have a mom newsletter, and so you'd love to include the infographic on the newsletter. Go for it. We want this information out there because we want to get all consumers and also everyone within the key influencer. That means people in government as well as elected officials to understand what it is we're talking about, because again, you have a big voice. And so this is a way for us to make your voice heard. So thank you, thank you, thank you. None of this would be possible. The summit wouldn't be possible. The work we're doing in research wouldn't be possible without you sharing your stories with us daily. Honestly, as participants in the patient registry, I hope this shows to you that we're there for you. We're using your information to fight the battles you wanted us to fight in Washington, D.C., with elected officials, with government officials, talking to companies, making sure that we elevate your voice. So for those of you who've put your information in the patient registry, thank you. For those of you who have not, we need it. We need your information, because what your information is going to do is it's going to help us accelerate making changes, like the changes we're trying to make on packaging, as well as getting people to invest in the research that's going to make you and your family safer. So please participate in the patient registry. But for those of you who have, for those of you who were involved in various surveys, keep answering those surveys. We use that information, and we just thank you so much for everything you do as part of the FAIR family. We look forward to getting all of your questions, and we'll be answering them as many as we possibly can. So thanks again.